This video will use a Pokemon Unite tier list to analyze the meta and rank all the picks according to how powerful they are as of now. While watching, keep in mind that the ranks within the same tier are actually ordered alphabetically rather than comparing within the rank. Something that a lot of content creators have been agreeing with is that right now is the best state of the game that Pokemon Unite has ever been in. In other words, the game is honestly relatively balanced. Yeah, there are some stronger picks that do stand out in the meta, but all the picks that are listed and all the picks that exist in Pokemon Unite have viability in their own regard. The way I'm going to rank these picks is going to be largely based off of how viable each pick is in whatever team composition. So all of the picks have viability like I said before, but some picks simply require more nuanced conditions to see success. Without much further ado, here is the entire list. Throughout my analysis, I'm going to be breaking down according to each role and then specific picks within the role. First up, we have the attackers. And the pick of the patch for attackers has to be Cinderace. The Blaze Kick build has been popping off as of late. The buffs that Pokemon Unite gave that specific move is absolutely absurd. I don't know if this was a pre-existing mechanic before. I want to say it wasn't because I've played a lot of Cinderace, but whenever you use Blaze Kick, upon the moment of impact, you can actually choose which direction you want to land. In other words, you can use this as a repositioning tool to either close in the gap even more, or to use it to escape out of sticky situations. Now, what does this mean? Why is this so important? Well, the move damage is incredibly high, but I'm sure a lot of you guys already know that the meta as of late is full of picks that can one-shot Cinderace. Blaze Kick stuns the opponent and allows Cinderace to reposition effectively for a team fight. Now, why is this important? Well, Cinderace is what we call an AD carry, and in that category he is what is known as a hyper carry. Therefore, he has to be alive to be able to deal his significant damage, and without dealing damage, he basically falls off. He becomes a very useless pick. So unless you're going to be doing damage with Cinderace and staying alive during those team fights, you really shouldn't be playing him. That's enough with Cinderace. Now let's move on to Pikachu. Pikachu has been absolutely happy ever since the update. The developers buffed its Volt Tackle, Unite Charge Rate, and I think one of its other secondary abilities. I'm not too sure off the top of my head. But anyway, this attacker is different from Cinderace because Pikachu's main objective isn't necessarily to deal a stream of DPS. Of course, it should still be doing damage, but its main goal is more so timing its abilities correctly to maximize the team's capabilities. Now, what does this exactly mean? Well, I talked about Volt Tackle a little bit before and how it was buffed. Volt Tackle keeps the enemy airborne, so this is something called CC. And because this move was buffed, it's an excellent move for Pikachu users to take at the moment. Time Volt Tackle whenever your allies are using CC already to extend the duration of it. This allows for easy picks and easy kills. You don't necessarily have to be the one dealing the damage, but you want to just extend the effects of your teammates' abilities. Here is the full attackers tier list. Moving on to the all-rounders. A lot of people may be wondering how strong is Dragonite really? Well, a lot of people thought it was kind of weak, but at the same time, its strengths are pretty overbearing. So I'm putting Dragonite in the A tier. The pick doesn't fit into every team composition, but at the same time, it's not the worst pick because it's also tanky, it deals significant damage, and also largely depends on how the player builds it. If Dragonite players find themselves falling behind, chances are they're going to be useless until maybe the very late game, and even then, if Dragonite has lower levels than its opponents, it's really hard to make a comeback. Now let's move on to Serena. Serena isn't nearly as powerful as it used to be, but even then, I would still say it's an easy S tier. The Pokemon has really high damage numbers still because they didn't touch any of its damage, and there are other ways to sustain throughout a fight besides spamming Triple XL. Of course, that still works and it's not as effective as it used to be, but you can use secondary skill to get a barrier instead for something more short term for burst trades. I wouldn't say Serena is necessarily overpowered anymore. I think it's at a relatively good spot, definitely a little bit on the stronger end. And I think Serena fits into a lot of different team compositions because you almost always want more CC on your team, and Serena is excellent at providing that, and also it stays alive for absurdly long periods of time. Of course, not as long as it used to stay, but even then, Serena is a great pick, easy S tier, 10 out of 10, or 9.8 out of 10 recommend. For defenders, Mamoswine's been pretty popular as of late, and personally speaking, I don't quite understand why. I've tried the Pokemon, it doesn't feel very good to me still, but they did change a lot of its early levels. They let Mamoswine obtain its abilities one level earlier for each one of them, and that's huge in regards to how relevant it can be from earlier on in the game. Regardless, maybe I'm just bad at using the skills. Shown in the gameplay here, I die all the time. But regardless, its moves are pretty good. It's a lot of CC, a lot of lockdown capabilities, damage numbers are relatively high, it's super tanky. The issue I see with the pick and why I can't recommend it as an S tier is because of its mobility. So many Pokemon are super fast in this game at the moment. Like, if you can't keep up with these Pokemon, chances are you'll just be left in their dust. Like Talonflame, Zeraora, Lucario, Serena, they're all super fast, and they're all super meta. That's why I put Mamoswine in A tier. Anyway, moving on to Blastoise, I want to say it's an S tier, but after so many nerfs, I really can't justify placing it in the S tier anymore. I still think the Pokemon's super strong, like very, very much recommend. It's just the shell build where you're like spouting out of a shell is pretty outdated. More typically you want to run Hydro Pump and Surf for maximum lockdown, and Blastoise's main job is to either push the enemy into his team or push them away from them, depending on whatever situation that you find yourself in. The pick fits into a lot of different team compositions, but the issue is that a lot of people don't know how to utilize its effective damage properly. Blastoise deals a lot of base damage even when going full tank items, and the key to playing the pick is definitely trusting your team. So unless you can trust your team to deal and follow up on your plays, you definitely should not be playing Blastoise because his Surf is a very hard engage. You can use it to escape as well, but it's a relatively long cooldown, so if you go in, you have to know where you're going, how you're going in, where your allies are, and how they're going to follow up. Here's the full defender tier list. Moving on to Speedsters, I'm going to start with Zeraora, and this is going to be a little bit of a rant. I'm placing it in the A tier, but I really still want to place it in the S tier, but after so many nerfs, similar to Blastoise, I can't really justify that anymore. Like, I feel like I'm going to be flamed hardcore if I place it in the S tier, so he's in the A tier. But regardless, I think Zeraora is really strong at the moment, even despite its nerfs. Its playstyle is really unfair. It's super mobile, it's really strong early game, and even late game, once you have a decent lead, you can burst down pretty much anyone. Zeraora does get countered if you lock him down and you time those lockdowns properly. The issue with the Zeraora pick is that it's typically very selfish. It'll only really go in if the player knows that they're gonna get a kill out of it, and because it's countered by CC, a lot of players will be selfishly waiting for their frontline to tank those abilities before Zeraora goes in. What results is often players playing with Zeraora may become frustrated because all the Zeraora seems to be doing is going in at the last second to take the kills. But that also depends on the playstyle, but at the same time, the character's very nature does reward it for doing so. Lastly, Zeraora isn't the best at securing objectives. In other words, it's not the best at sniping Zapdos, getting those last hits on Dreadnought, or even Rotom. Now, a Pokemon that does excel at that is Talonflame. It's also similar to Zeraora, where it's definitely a little bit more selfish by nature in regards to how it engages, how it deals damage, but there's a big difference. Talonflame is hands down the best Pokemon for taking objectives, and seeing as how taking Zapdos or Articuno pretty much just guarantees the game, this is an invaluable trait to have in a Pokemon. Talonflame flies it into the air, allows it to become invulnerable and traverse the map in ways that literally no other Pokemon can even begin to replicate. This allows Talonflame to take strong control of the map which therefore also aligns with its objective control. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen the Talonflame just swoop in for the Dreadnought, swoop in for the Articuno, swoop in for the Zapdos. Talonflame definitely plays very selfishly, so it doesn't always fit into every team composition, but his mechanic of securing objectives allows it to see success despite being placed in a terrible team composition. Here is the full Speedster tier list. Now last but not least, we have the supports. I placed Eldegoss in the S tier, and this might be a little bit biased considering it did receive a slight nerf. But at the same time, I think Eldegoss is one of the best picks to center out any team composition. So many of the times you'll be surrounded by pure attackers, pure damage dealers, no tanks, speedsters, just pure damage dealing carries. And when in that position, you don't want to lock in another carry. You can also potentially lock in a defender, but what's even better is locking down Eldegoss. Eldegoss provides the extra heal, the extra barrier, the extra support that these kinds of team compositions need. And if you don't have that much damage on your team, you shouldn't be playing Eldegoss. 9 out of 10 times, this usually won't be the case. Here's the full support tier list. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon Unite coverage.